Precisely at 8:03 on a sunny Saturday morning, I stepped outside with a mug of black coffee, almost choking, not from the heat but from shock. My front yard, formerly tranquil, had been transformed into what looked like a wedding exhibition overnight. Neatly arranged rows of white chairs adorned with pink decorations sprawled across my horse paddock, a DJ booth replacing my usual tractor spot, and a wedding arch fastened to the top rail of my corral fence. Above the pen housing lawsuit, my most unpredictable rodeo bull. There was Karen from the HOA, as if she'd acquired the entire county, in a pastel blue pantsuit, barking orders at caterers assembling shrimp cocktails beside a haystack. Blinking repeatedly, I realized this wasn't a dream. My land had become a full-scale wedding venue without my consent. I knew this day well. It was rodeo day, reserved for bull practice without intrusions, unless someone fancied courting calamity. Descending the porch steps, still grappling with the chaos, Karen caught my eye and waved as though we were brunch companions. "Oh hi, you've finally stirred," she said, treating me as a guest. Without responding, I surveyed my pasture, transformed into a wedding fantasy. The bride's makeup chair plugged into my barn's outlet, guest parking occupying half the grazing field, and a catering van parked squarely on the rodeo track. A glittering gold sign taped to the fence announced, "Welcome to Amanda and Brad's rustic dream wedding." Karen marched over, clipboard in hand. "We'll wrap this up by sundown. No worries, we have porter potties, a valet service, and even a live country band. It's completely self-contained." I raised my eyebrows. "Karen, this is my ranch, not your personal event venue." Her expression faltered briefly as if I'd spoken in Latin. Then she chuckled dismissively, tapping her clipboard. "Oh, don't be like that. I cleared it with the HOA, you must have missed the notice. It's a community event." I examined the clipboard's contents. A casual email from a committee member allowing a temporary outdoor celebration, unsigned with no official headers, not even addressed to me. I returned it to her. "I'm not part of the HOA, Karen. Never have been. This land is agricultural, not residential," I explained. For the first time she looked annoyed. "We assumed you wouldn't mind. It's for my daughter's big day, she wanted something authentic. Besides, your cows aren't using it." I began to argue but paused, noticing Duke, my ranch hand, exiting the barn with a shovel, smirking knowingly. He nodded, asking without words whether I wanted the bulls released. "Not yet," I replied, walking up to Karen. "Just curious, what time's the ceremony?" She checked her watch. 4 o'clock sharp. "Why?" I smiled politely. "No reason. I knew at 4 o'clock the rodeo timer would activate, opening the arena gates, not for wedding guests or flower girls, but for lawsuit and 4 unruly broncos and used to saddles." As Karen turned to instruct the band on sound levels for the bridal march, I envisioned the ensuing chaos, the screams, running, and airborne cake. It occurred to me, if she wanted rustic, I'd deliver rustic. Returning to the porch, I muttered to Duke, "Don't cancel rodeo day." He raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" I nodded. "Let the bulls run." His grin widened as if the Texas dawn itself. As I sat on my porch finishing my coffee, I observed the group adorning my cattle fence with flower garlands. Part of me considered warning them, but the memories of every insincere apology, every dispute lodged by Karen, and her persistent suggestions to repaint my barn held me back. Watching her dream wedding unwittingly steer into a storm of retribution was oddly satisfying. By midday, guests started to arrive in style with SUVs, sports cars, and even a limousine, casually parking across the pasture. Some blocked the rear gate and others left tire marks in the softened earth. Karen, adorned in a floral sash, welcomed each vehicle in a regal manner. The bride showed up an hour later. Her white dress gleamed brightly. Amid the commotion, the wedding planner shouted about Bhutan, the DJ spun a blend of country ballads and mellow pop tunes, and someone placed a massive cooler of rose in front of the manure pile, an almost perfect arrangement without any effort from me. At around 2 o'clock, the sheriff's truck arrived. I beckoned him over, and he parked beneath the oak tree, stepping out with gum in his mouth and one hand resting casually on his belt. "Is this the place?" he asked. I gestured towards the spectacle. "Indeed." Surveying the scene, he shook his head, chuckling. "Should I shut it down?" Pausing, I replied, "No, just stay till about 4. This will be worth your front row seat." He grinned, leaning against his truck. Meanwhile, on the field, final preparations were underway. A wedding cake, towering with 4 tiers adorned with delicate sugar horseshoes, was rolled out. Their attempts at mimicking country charm were evident, though they were oblivious to the impending chaos. At 3:55, just before the main event, I turned to Duke at the release gate. Ready? With a thumbs up from him, I relaxed in my chair, coffee gone and heart racing. Karen desired a rustic wedding. She was about to experience the most unforgettable one in state history. As the sun began to dip over the ridge and bathe the sky in soft amber hues, the wedding music crescendoed, guests adjusting in their seats, dabbing at sweat and fanning themselves with glossy programs reading Amanda and Brad, Love in the Country. Karen strutted down the aisle lined with rented white chairs, exchanging air kisses and announcing, "We'll start in a few minutes." Radiant, she presided as if she owned the land beneath her, even commandeering my horse trailer for her bridal preparations. From my vantage point, it resembled a reality show, affluent city folk impersonating rural life, oblivious that they stood on a functioning rodeo ground. Here, seasoned cowboys endured, bulls rampaged, and adrenaline surged more fiercely than the soil on their polished shoes. The pastor had arrived, conversing with the groom beneath the unsteady wedding arch, gently swaying in the wind. A gentle breeze drifted across the ranch, carrying the unmistakable scent of hay, sweat, and the primal tension sensed by animals when change approaches. I glanced towards the barn's far side where Duke poised at the fence. Broncos pawed restlessly, stirring dust. Lawsuit, our unremarkable bull, gazed intently, his stare could melt steel. The timer was primed, the gate secured. All that was left was to await the opportune moment, now fast approaching. Finally, the bride emerged, veil fluttering as two young girls scattered rose petals at her feet. The crowd rose in unison, the music shifting to a slow piano rendition of a country love song. Karen beamed, as though orchestrating a royal affair, disregarding my presence. Remaining seated with my arms crossed, I now sipped sweet tea. The sheriff watched the unfolding drama with silent amusement. "Sure you want to do this?" he asked. They seemed so content. Without irony, I responded, "That won't last." As the bride reached the arch and the music faded, the pastor began his speech with the usual sentimental prose about love, unity, and souls intertwining. The crowd smiled, some were moved to tears. The clicking of cameras created a picturesque scene, superficially charming if you overlooked its roots in trespassing and entitlement. As the pastor poised to inquire if anyone objected, an ominous sound reverberated across the field. A deep snort from Lawsuit met everyone's ears. Karen dismissed it with a wave, urging the pastor to proceed, though his moment's hesitation would prove regretful. Suddenly, a loud metallic noise erupted from the barn. The timer hit 0 and the gate flung open. Lawsuit, a powerhouse of fury, charged out, his bellow resonating fiercely, followed closely by two spirited broncos kicking up dust. Initially, the wedding crowd remained blissfully oblivious, absorbed in the ceremony. That ended abruptly when the DJ, too near the arena gate, shrieked and fled, his speakers clattering behind him. Guests turned instinctively, their attention captured by pandemonium. A scream pierced the air. The bride, caught up in her gown, struggled to escape while the groom tumbled gracelessly into the flower bed. Indifferent to tuxedos or decorations, Lawsuit plowed through the refreshment table, champagne bottles launching like missiles. Elderly attendees scattered as a Broncos kick sent a bouquet stand airborne, and amidst the scramble, the wedding cake met a disastrous fate, collapsing in a sugary mess. Cameras toppled, tables crumbled, and through the chaos, the animals continued their unabated rampage amidst swirling dust and cries. Karen's voice rose above all. "My daughter's wedding," she lamented, frantically urging people to safety while dodging a horse. She locked eyes with me and I could only nod. The sheriff, chuckling behind his shades, remarked dryly, "Now that's rustic." The spectacle intensified when one bewildered bronco vaulted a catering van and obliterated the decorative arch. A groomsman, clearly unaccustomed to equestrian encounters, shrieked and sought refuge in a paddling pool full of ice and soda, steadfastly refusing to emerge. Meanwhile, the photographer, undeterred, continued capturing the mayhem from behind a haystack. Remarkably, no serious injuries were reported. A few bruises, a couple of twisted ankles, and one very shaken DJ, asserting he witnessed his life rerun when the bull halted mere feet from his turntables. After tense minutes, Duke managed to corral the Broncos, and Lawsuit, having toppled a portable toilet, leisurely trotted back to his pen as if finishing a workout. With the dust settled, the din subsided. The music now hushed, the crowd, bedraggled and cake-stained, shuffled away in clusters, murmuring like survivors of a storm. Karen approached, hair disheveled, her face flushed with fury. "You orchestrated this," she accused, seething. "You ruined my daughter's wedding." I leaned back calmly. No, Karen. I simply didn't cancel rodeo day. It was you who chose a working ranch for a wedding. Her finger trembled as she gestured towards the chaos. My lawyer will speak to you, she threatened. The sheriff interjected politely, brandishing a notepad. Actually, you'll hear from the county, trespassing, property damage, endangering livestock. Shall I continue? Karen's demeanor crumbled. She stormed off, voice rising into her phone as her heels sunk into the mud. Duke ambled over, dusting off his gloves. Think she learned her lesson? He asked, surveying the wreckage of toppled chairs and trampled cake. Probably not, I replied, but the internet surely will. In the wake of the wedding rodeo, where elegance met mayhem, the scene lay in disarray, a battlefield draped in frosting. Scattered chairs resembled skeletons across the pasture, napkins danced in the breeze, a designer shoe dangled from a fence post, and the wedding arch lay shattered, half buried amidst hoof prints and rose petals. The once pristine cake had become a crater of pink and white goo, as bees circled thoughtfully in reconnaissance. Although Karen was far from finished, less than 24 hours after the debacle, she stormed back to my ranch, armed with a clipboard, sunglasses, a steely determination, and an unshakable air of presumed superiority. She strode onto the porch without so much as a knock, brandishing a paper as if it were a badge of celestial authority. I'm lodging a formal complaint with the Homeowners Association for property interference and emotional distress, she announced with imperious assertiveness. I sipped my coffee leisurely and cast a glance towards the sheriff's vehicle parked by the barn, where he was exchanging laughs with Duke about mending fences. Karen noticed the sheriff and lowered her voice. You think this is amusing? She whispered harshly. My daughter's wedding was ruined, my guests were disgraced, and we were forced to summon an Uber from a cow pasture. I inspected the document she held, a handwritten grievance to the HOA board, accusing me of orchestrating a bull-induced terror attack. With raised eyebrows, I countered, You do realize you weren't invited here. You trespassed, setting up a wedding event on private property. The bull was merely doing its duty, you happened to cross its path. Karen didn't flinch. I was acting for the community. All venues were fully booked. It was urgent, she insisted. I leaned forward slightly. Urgent enough to forge a letter from the HOA and deceive me? That's not urgency, that's fraud. Her face momentarily twitched. That's quite an accusation, she retorted. It's also true, came a voice from behind her. The sheriff, hands in pockets, grinning as if he'd witnessed the finest soap opera twist of all time, said, I spoke to the HOA president earlier. They didn't endorse anything. In fact, they're quite upset you used their name without consent. Best to ease down your attitude. Karen, visibly simmering, barely kept her composure before retreating to her Lexus, slamming the door with such vigor that the alarm chirped. By late afternoon, events took a new turn. One of the wedding guests, an influencer of some repute, shared the footage online. It began innocently enough, showing the bride walking down the aisle, smiles abound, music playing. But then, as a bull charged through the buffet, chaos reigned. Screams, airborne cake, and a slow-motion scene of Karen diving beneath a table, her wig askew. The video amassed 500,000 views within 6 hours, comments piling up. When Pinterest meets rodeo, bullish bride alert. Real countryside weddings aren't for the faint-hearted. Karen's nightmare had captivated the internet. Despite her attempts to flag the video, the online community had already seized upon it. Memes titled Karen's Country Catastrophe and Bridal Buckaroo Breakdown proliferated. I hadn't posted anything myself, but watching it spread brought me a sort of vindication. The truth has a curious way of packing a punch, stronger than any bull on the ranch. 2 days later, the HOA convened an emergency meeting. For years, Karen had been their vociferous critic, griping about grass lengths, mailbox colors, and fence heights. Now she had become a liability. At the meeting, she sought to recast the tale, claiming she acted with neighborly intentions, believing I wouldn't mind. But the HOA board was skeptical. Not only had she falsified an email, she had jeopardized their credibility and potential legal repercussions. One board member, a retired judge, articulated the crux. Karen, this isn't about good intentions. It's about unauthorized access, property damage, and misrepresentation. You overstepped the mark. A swift motion followed. The board voted to suspend her pending investigation. She left pale and quivering, yet still murmuring about being the true victim. In the days that ensued, Karen adopted a retaliatory stance, plastering the neighborhood with flyers accusing me of animal abuse, illegal rodeo activities, and being a menace to the community. She even attempted to file a restraining order against one of my cows, alleging it glared at her menacingly as she drove past. Her tales found little credence even among her friends. The community had seen the video, heard the accounts, and understood this wasn't about justice. It was about Karen's bruised ego. The final bout of absurdity arrived when she presented a petition at a community potluck, proposing a ban on livestock within a 1-mile radius of her home. Half the attendees kept chickens and one gentleman had a pet goat in a stroller. They chuckled her right out of the park. Meanwhile, my ranch thrived amidst the spectacle. I even found myself interviewed by a local radio station about the viral wedding episode. Following the rodeo fiasco, I remained grounded but emphasized the importance of respecting private property and working livestock. Duke printed t-shirts with "I survived the Karen Rodeo" and a cartoon of Lawsuit, wearing a bridal veil. They were a hit and sold out within a week. Parents began visiting the ranch just to snap a picture with the notorious bull. One morning, I discovered a small parcel on my porch containing a handwritten note. "Sorry for the mess. My mom is insane." It was from Karen's daughter, Amanda. She also enclosed a photo of her and her groom at a beach resort, both sporting wide grins. "No wedding dress, no bull, just peace. We eloped after the chaos. Best decision ever," she wrote. Karen disappeared from sight for some time but resurfaced with one final attempt by defacing my front fence with red spray paint, accusing it as cow prison. Unbeknownst to her, I had installed new security cameras with infrared capabilities. The footage captured Karen hooded and stumbling in the darkness, startled by an owl. I handed the evidence to the sheriff, who fined her once more and warned her of potential criminal charges if her actions persisted. Humbled and stripped of influence, Karen finally retreated. But my work wasn't over yet. The community had questions and I had a rodeo to organize, not just for cowboys, but for anyone reminiscing on the day the HOA's loudest voice was bested by a bull named Lawsuit. A week post the viral spectacle, the tale of Karen's wedding rodeo continued to echo throughout the town and online, turning into a local legend even the gas station staff couldn't resist discussing. Nearly everywhere I went, someone had a quip or a new nickname for her. Bullzilla, Queen of Rodeo Rage, Wedding Wreckage Karen. Meanwhile, I focused on restoring the ranch with Duke, repairing fences, cleaning up tire marks from the parking debacle, and patching the barn wall a bronco had kicked in the chaos. Soon enough, an ominously thick manila envelope with Karen's name as the sender arrived at my doorstep. Inside was a legal document claiming I was guilty of deliberate sabotage, reckless endangerment, emotional anguish and destruction of wedding property, demanding over $75,000 in damages, alongside public apologies in both local papers and online platforms. I scrutinized the absurd allegations, astounded by Karen's escalation rather than retreat. The next day, I handed the envelope to the sheriff, who sighed after a brief glance, saying, "Seems she's staking her pride on courtroom drama." I promptly called my lawyer, a longtime friend, well-versed in land disputes and livestock theft. He chuckled heartily upon first hearing the tale, but grew serious when reviewing the paperwork, acknowledging the legitimacy of the civil suit. We prepared a counterclaim addressing trespass, unlawful use of private property, vandalism, slander, and sought reparations for damages to the ranch. Gathered statements from Duke, the sheriff, the pastor, the DJ, and even Amanda's photographer, who willingly shared unedited video footage. The video captured the precise moment Lawsuit broke free, with several high-definition shots showing Karen yelling at guests and attempting to wield a chair as a shield. Additionally, the security footage showed her vandalizing my fence after dark. "An open and shut case," said confidently. "She's walked into a buzzsaw." Our court date was scheduled 2 weeks later, and for the first time in ages, I felt eager to don a suit. On the appointed day, the courthouse lobby buzzed like a community reunion with half the town in attendance. Some were merely curious, others were there to support me, and a few hoped Karen would face defeat, freeing them at HOA meetings. Karen arrived clad in a navy blue blazer, clutching a stack of papers, flanked by 2 lawyers who appeared to regret their involvement in the case. Avoiding eye contact, she sat at the room's far end, fidgeting as if expecting to be crowned the victor by the judge. As the proceedings commenced, the judge surveyed the files, prepared for the spectacle. Adjusting his spectacles, the judge exhaled deeply. With a hint of sarcasm, he queried, "This case involves a wedding and a bull named Lawsuit?" The room erupted into mild laughter. Karen's lead solicitor rose with theatrical flair, recounting the emotional ordeal suffered by Karen and her kin. He elaborated on how the sudden appearance of livestock had transformed a hallowed event into a catastrophe, employing terms such as sabotage and humiliation. Karen dabbed at her eyes for effect. Then our chance came. Ree stood composed, opened his folder, and methodically guided the judge through the sequence of events. He presented the deed to my land, noted the absence of homeowners association authority, exposed the forged approval letter, and exhibited video evidence. The judge repeatedly sought clarification, clearly skeptical, as Ree displayed images of Karen guiding guests on where to park, connecting equipment without consent, and the notorious bull incident which the internet affectionately termed the Horned Hurricane. When footage of spray-painted vandalism hit the screen, the courtroom audibly reacted. Karen's composure faltered. Leaning forward, the judge asked, "Is that you defacing this man's fence?" Silence was her response, while her lawyers attempted an objection, but the damage was irreversible. The most surprising twist came via Amanda, Karen's daughter, who requested to speak. Nervously yet resolutely she declared, "My wedding wasn't meant to be on the ranch. I didn't want it there. Mom insisted and claimed she'd manage everything. I was unaware the land wasn't legally hers or that she fabricated an HOA letter. I pleaded with her to halt upon seeing the bulls. It wasn't ruined by him, my mother ruined it." The courtroom fell into a hushed silence. Even Karen was uncharacteristically mute. The judge thanked Amanda and addressed both legal teams, declaring he'd heard sufficient evidence. The decision was expedient. Karen's lawsuit was entirely dismissed whilst my countersuit was upheld. She was directed to compensate for property damage, cover legal expenses, and issue a formal public apology in writing. Moreover, any future trespassing on my land without permission would see her facing criminal charges. Karen stood immobilized, lips trembling. Her lawyer murmured something, perhaps advising her silence, but she couldn't contain her indignation. "This isn't just," she retorted. "I endeavored to provide my daughter with a dream wedding. He reduced it to shambles." The judge retorted, devoid of sentiment, "No, you created the chaos. He merely owned the venue." Beyond the courthouse, reporters vied for stories. Cameras clicked incessantly, snapping Duke, Ree, and me. Someone even suggested lawsuit make an appearance, but I reserved that spectacle for the rodeo. Karen fled the scene, head hung low, declining to respond to questions. Amanda lingered briefly, expressed gratitude, and mentioned her desire to relocate soon from her mother's vicinity. I wished her all the best. That evening, a modest gathering transpired at the ranch, a circle of friends, neighbors, and the local constable. We cooked brisket, played music, and jested about the trial. Duke delivered a short toast, "Here's to bulls and bravado," and claimed triumph over the HOA. Surveying the tranquil pasture where the marriage mayhem unspooled, the landscape felt serene, reclaimed, just like my reputation. As twilight descended, I sensed the storm had indeed abated. 3 weeks post-trial, life at the ranch mostly resumed its usual pace. The fences were freshly painted, tire tracks diminished beneath new grass, and Lawsuit returned to his customary cantankerous routine, snorting at birds and pursuing any squirrel bold enough to trespass. I believed calm had been restored, and perhaps Karen had absorbed the lesson from her public embarrassment and legal defeat. Yet, personalities like hers seldom retreat discreetly. It began subtly, cryptic phone calls that yielded silence, flyers mysteriously materializing at the gate, warning locals about the allegedly perilous man harboring wild animals. I dismissed them. Then came bogus animal control reports. Twice within a week, someone claimed I neglected livestock or permitted them wander the streets. The responding officer was also witness during the wedding uproar. He surveyed the ranch, patted Lawsuit's head and commented, "I'm simply completing a report. Clearly your bull has superior accommodations than many." But Karen's shenanigans were unrelenting. One midnight, Duke rang from the barn. He detected movement by the rear fence on the security cameras. I donned my boots, fetched a torch, and got ready for what lay ahead. Fresh footprints were spotted near the feed shed, accompanied by a spray-painted message reading "No more bulls" on the side of the chicken coop, which left Duke enraged while I felt exhausted. Upon reviewing the surveillance footage, there she was again, Karen in a hoodie, attempting to remain unnoticed, stumbling around as if starring in her own late-night vendetta. We handed over the evidence to the sheriff, and she was no longer merely fined but faced charges of trespassing and vandalism. Subsequently, community service and a restraining order were imposed. The sheriff issued a stern warning that another incursion on my ranch would land her in a jail cell alongside someone named Bubba. Despite this, I knew more needed to be done, not out of revenge but to reclaim the narrative once and for all. The The story continued to captivate locals and tourists alike, drawing visitors anxious to see where the wedding bull went on its spree. If Karen sought fame, I decided to give it to her, on my own terms. I contacted Ree with the idea of hosting a public event at the ranch, not a rodeo but something distinct, a one-time community affair called the Wedding Wrangle. The plan was to recreate the chaos minus the risk. There would be no real bulls, only inflatable ones, along with cake-tossing competitions, veil relays, and a dunk tank featuring a cardboard cutout of Karen for pie-throwing fun, all in the spirit of amusement. Word spread rapidly, local businesses came forward to sponsor, and vendors eager to join lined up. Even Amanda offered to donate her unused wedding decorations for the event, stating her relationship with her mother had deteriorated after the court proceedings. She and Brad had relocated and were expecting their first child. "Let the town have its spectacle," she remarked. "I'm pleased you're turning it into something for people to laugh at." When the weekend arrived, the turnout surpassed all expectations. Hundreds flocked from near and far, drawn to experience the notorious ranch where a wedding was famously disrupted. Food trucks, games, and a mock wedding photo booth enabled couples to pose amid faux bulls and hay bales bearing "I do" signs. Rodeo Duke manned the grill, donning a t-shirt emblazoned with the face of lawsuit. The sheriff joined in, skillfully riding the mechanical bull while waving his hat to the crowd's delight. At sunset, I delivered a brief speech, thanking everyone for their attendance and advocating for requesting permission before orchestrating events on others' properties. Laughter and applause filled the air. A single woman's brazen trespass had transformed into a celebration of resilience, humor, and community spirit. As night descended and string lights illuminated the ranch, families danced to a country band under the stars on the same soil where chaos once reigned. Yet the night had one more chapter. Towards the event's close, as attendees packed up and children pleaded for another hay wagon ride, I spotted a familiar face near the fence, Karen. She was dressed down, appearing older, fatigued, possibly even a bit aimless. For a brief moment, I imagined she might come to apologize. However, she merely stood, arms crossed, observing quietly as others enjoyed the festivities on the land she perhaps still wished was her daughter's wedding venue. I approached, stopping a short distance from her. She remained silent and simply stared. I nodded courteously and said, "Evening, Karen." She blinked, seemingly caught off guard by my acknowledgement. "You've turned this into a circus," she muttered. "No," I replied coolly, "you did. I just ensured entry was free." She scoffed and began to leave, but I added, "By the way, your cutout raised approximately 200 pounds for the animal shelter." Without a word, she walked away, disappearing into the night like a shadow of a bygone storm. After her departure, I surveyed the ranch, the lights, the laughter. The peace had returned. I realized then the saga was concluded. Not because she wouldn't attempt again, individuals like her often strive to reclaim control, but because the community had witnessed and embraced the truth. They had stood by me, converting ridicule into celebration. That triumph, far greater than any legal victory, was the true success. The following morning, rising early, I strolled to the pasture, coffee in hand, observing the chairs from the event being packed away, banners rolled up, yet the warmth of goodwill lingered in the atmosphere. Lawsuit stood in his paddock, gazing out. He looked at me as if a repeat performance was on the cards, so I chuckled and gave him an apple, saying, "Sorry, mate. You've done more than enough." Duke appeared beside me, taking a sip from his coffee. "Do you reckon she's finished now?" he asked. I shrugged, indifferent. "It doesn't matter anymore. Let her vent all she wants. We've got fences to repair and a spring rodeo to organize." He flashed a grin and suggested, "And perhaps a wedding wrangle sequel next year?" I chuckled, "Only if she decides to RSVP." As we strolled back towards the barn, I felt an unfamiliar sense of resolution. Not the kind marked by legal documents, but the kind that settles deep in your soul after confronting chaos and emerging stronger. My ranch remained in my hands, my reputation untainted. As for Karen, well, she now knows the consequences of mixing weddings with rodeos.